things, that's for sure. Delighted to say that joining us in the studio, it is the one and only Matt Tissier.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here.
You're a one-club legend. We've seen, I suppose, a lot of kind of players coming to the end of their careers, the likes of Iniesta, Xavi at Barcelona. But is the one club, is the kind of the player that stays faithful to one club for his entire career, is that going to effectively be null and void in the next few years, do you think?
I think the only time you'll probably get it now is if that player actually starts at one of the top clubs. It's a lot easier to stay at a top club who are winning trophies all the time and you're getting paid the top dollar. So I think the only ones that probably will now are the ones at those kind of clubs. I think it'd be very rare to see somebody at a kind of mid to lower end Premier League club who was looking like a really, really good player be able to resist the temptations that are on offer in terms of the monetary gain that can be that, and challenging playing Champions League football and challenging for Premier League titles.
You did though, Matt. You spurned the advances of a number of clubs numerous times over your career. Tottenham, that's true, right? Tottenham came in?
Yeah, absolutely. I was very close to joining Spurs, yeah.
So what was the reason? What always held you back?
I think there were several reasons. There were family reasons at times, but there were also footballing reasons. So I've always wanted to play football the way that I like to play it. I was a little bit different, and I think I could get away with doing that at Southampton. I probably couldn't have done if I'd have gone somewhere else. I also felt like I owed a huge debt of gratitude to Southampton. They were the ones that gave me my chance in professional football. I was just a little kid from Guernsey. Very few people from that island ever been professional footballers, and Southampton took a chance on me, and I was always really, really grateful for what they did. And the biggest thing about it all, I think, was when we were struggling, and there was speculation about me leaving. Had I have left at that point, and had Southampton been relegated, that season or the following season, I would have taken that really personally. I wouldn't have been able to live with that, because I would have felt like I've abandoned the ship and now they've gone down and it's my fault. And I didn't want that on my conscience, and that was another one of the reasons why I stayed.
You mentioned Spurs there. Did Fergie ever get on the blower to you?
Not that I'm aware of. No. My agent spoke to me about the Spurs thing, Liverpool and Chelsea, with the three.
It's not bad clubs. Not bad clubs chasing after you. Management.
No regrets though, Matt. I mean, in terms of
regrets. No, I don't do regrets. I've had a fantastic life. I'm very proud of the 16 years that I spent in the first team at Southampton. Very proud of the fact that they were all spent in the top flight, despite for probably 14 out of those 16 seasons we were probably favourites to get relegated. And so to just stay in the Premier League, with probably was probably the smallest ground for most of those seasons in the league, the smallest budget probably, and so that's something that I can look back on and be very proud of.
They've been a club that have punched above their weight for so long, and being in the top half of the table, a club like Southampton, that is an incredible run that they've been on. It does look at the moment like a bitter, difficult relegation battle is lying ahead of them, and I wanted to get your take on just the plight of Southampton and really what you feel about Mark Hughes and his position there.
I think at the moment, we had a fantastic 4 years, probably the best 4 year spell in the club's history in terms of Premier League finishes, top flight finishes. 4 finishes in the top 8 was quite incredible, really. I think for a club of our size. Obviously, they bought in a lot of players, they sold a lot of players, but the first 3 or 4 years they were there, they replaced the players really, really well. It's difficult to keep being successful in the transfer market. It's such a hit and miss market that we've had a couple of seasons where the signings haven't quite worked out and haven't quite been as good as what we thought they were going to be. So that meant it was a struggle last season, and it looks like it's going to be a little bit of a struggle so far this season. It's very early days and things can change very quickly. You put 2 or 3 wins together and all of a sudden there's a massive gap between you and the bottom 3, and you're kind of looking above you instead of what's happening down below. So hopefully that's what happens to Southampton pretty quick. But I think the Mark Hughes did a good job in keeping us up last season. I think what I've noticed this season a little bit, I think the intensity that was there for those last 7 or 8 games last season has just dropped off a little bit. And we're not a team that can afford to drop off and still win games. We're not good enough to not be at 100% each week and win football matches in the Premier League. And I think from what I've seen this season so far, it's just not quite the same urgency as what there was when we were staring relegation in the face. Perhaps they don't feel like they're in a relegation battle at the moment, but from experience, you are in it until you've got a big enough gap to be able to look above you and not below you.
You've got a greater understanding of the club than me, Matthew. One of the things that I've observed, similar to Swansea, now Graham Potter, who I know you played with at Southampton,
Indeed.
big fan of him, am I, because he worked at Ostersund. I have a friend who worked with him, still does, at Swansea. Swansea lost their way a little bit. They I guess, tore up what was so successful for them. I've got to be honest and say, Les Reed, what a job he's done. I get the impression, though, Southampton have done behind the scenes something similar. They've got caught up in the rat race of the Premier League, their recruitment policy, being brave with Pochettino, being brave with Ronald Koeman. They've lost that a little bit, have they not?
I think you're probably right. I think it's a very good point. I think it's one of those situations where you want to, the situation we were in last season, you wanted to kind of play safe a little bit, and they tried to give Pellegrino the chance to get us out of the trouble he was in. Almost left it a little bit too late, and that period we had to try and save ourselves. I think they went for somebody with Premier League experience to try and guide him out of that, and that's obviously where Mark Hughes came in. I think from the fans' point of view, yes, we were really successful with Koeman and with Pochettino, and I don't know if they wanted to just go down a route of making it a little bit more British, and try and bring a British core into the club again. But it is difficult, with the signings that we made that were all really successful. We made lots of money in selling them on.
Off Liverpool.
Mostly off Liverpool. But it is difficult to keep doing that. And I think at some point, I think we got ahead of ourselves a little bit. We tried to stop the selling thing by not letting Van Dijk go to Liverpool when they first came in for him. And I think by doing that, they probably hindered themselves a little bit, because Van Dijk's attitude when he was told he couldn't go all of a sudden
dropped off.
That then created problems in the changing room. So eventually that's why they did sell him in January. So we tried to stop the whole selling thing and keeping players and try and build the team, and it didn't work. So we have to kind of almost go back to what we did before that and just be a little bit better with our recruitment.
The British manager, you mentioned Mark Hughes obviously getting that British core into the club. Did you ever consider giving it a tilt? It's just a thankless industry, really, isn't it? When you look at the pressure that these guys are under, and when they're interviewed under the lights, they look like they're ready to have a nervous breakdown, most of them. But I mean, does it appeal to you, Matt?
It didn't appeal to me. It kind of wasn't really in my nature as a person to be kind of in charge of a whole squad of players and have the entire responsibility of the football club resting on your shoulders. I was quite happy to do that as a player and be the one that people were expecting things of. But as a manager, that's kind of out of your hands. Once you've picked the team and you send the players out on the pitch, you just got to sit there and just hope that they do what you tell them to do.
I love the fact as well, we, or you more to the point than I, but you're paid to now pass judgment on these kind of managers and what they're doing. And Jose Mourinho is the one that seems to be put up there to be knocked down right now. Manchester United, huge club, not only in England, around the world as well. What on earth are you making of what's going on there? Because the noise coming out of that football club would suggest that all is not well and that a parting of ways is inevitable.
I think that's probably right. I think it has been a bit of a roller coaster for him. And when you think of what he did last season, finishing second, last season I thought was an incredible achievement, because I think it was down to his tactical nous, because I don't think they were the second best team in the Premier League last season. So you have to give him a lot of credit for that. But it doesn't seem like it's not the Manchester United that we once knew. And I think all these managers that have followed Sir Alex Ferguson are paying the price of trying to follow probably the best manager of my lifetime. And I think that is the problem. A Manchester United that finishes second and wins a couple of cup competitions, you'd think, okay, that's pretty decent. And I think it would be pretty decent if they did it in the style of play that Sir Alex had them playing in. It was gung-ho, and you're throwing men forward and you're putting pressure on teams in the last 10 minutes and you're scoring late goals the whole time. And if it was like that, he'd get away with it. He wouldn't be under pressure.
Yeah.
But I think because of the way that his team play, and it's not that brand of exciting football you see Liverpool playing, you see Man City playing, even Spurs playing, Arsenal. It's not that kind of football. It's different, and that's not what Man United fans have been used to.
There's no doubt in his early years, and he's had tremendous success, and I think that's a lot of why he gets so much coverage and so much attention is because of the success he's had. But in his early years, he had an aura, certainly in the big matches in Europe, where even if he didn't have the best team, he'd have a plan.
Absolutely.
And he'd be able to go and implement that. Famously, Inter Milan beating Barcelona in that run to the Champions League back in 2010.
Yep.
It looked the other day when they were up against Juventus that he didn't, again,
and
it's just
have a plan.
It's a continuation of the whole storyline from the season. He comes into the press conference, shrugs and sort of says, well, they've invested so much money in all these players, and people are saying you've spent 400 million in 5 transfer windows. What are you talking about? He's now got to the point where he's just passing the buck, and surely that can't continue.
No, it can't. He seems to have, the last couple of years, seems to have changed as a person.
Yeah.
He really does. When he first came in, I loved his arrogance and his cockiness, and he had a little bit of a twinkle in his eye when he was saying things.
Yeah.
You knew that he was just he's taking the mick there. But now he's just kind of got a bit. It's almost like you got a bit of a grumpy old man.
Yes,
that's what he looks like. He's become a grumpy old man. Now I don't know. Obviously, the pressures of that job are huge, and when you've done it for that length of time, I'm guessing at some point that has to get to you inside your head a little bit. And he almost looks like a man that's quite sad at the moment.
And is that the club that's done that? There's a school of thought out there, Matt, that in those negotiations, we're not privy to them, that Manchester United, Ed Woodward, whoever was at the hierarchy of that club, have said Manchester United stand for certain values. You cannot be doing some of the antics that you've done in previous guises in previous clubs. School of thought, truth to that, perhaps?
Maybe a little bit of truth to that, but I'm not sure, because his last spell at Chelsea, towards the end of that spell, he got a little bit like that, and I don't know if he's just kind of almost gets to the point where he's perhaps a little bit fed up of dealing with the players and the egos of the players.
Maybe it's social media and the football's moved on.
I think very much it has moved on, and I think that may have something to do with it.
Does that hurt his legacy, the fact that he's always sold on a Mo Salah or a Kevin De Bruyne? He's not chosen to develop the young talent that have then gone on to blossom. Does that, versus a Pep Guardiola, for example, someone you'd measure him against, ultimately will Mourinho be judged harshly on that?
Possibly, but I think ultimately, when you talk about Jose Mourinho in 20 years' time, you look back, and we live in a society now that's obsessed with stats, and you look back and go, what did he win? Because that's kind of what people judge you on, and there in black and white is what he's done in his career.
In 20 years, no one's going to talk about him selling on Kevin De Bruyne from Chelsea.
And no one's going to say, oh yeah, but he won the Champions League with Inter, but geez, they were boring to watch.
Yeah.
No one's going to say that. They're going to go, oh, Champions League winner, league winner in a different country, league winner in another country, Champions League winner, and you just go, wow.
Of all the managers, Matt, right now, and even before, that have gone before, who would you have loved to have played under? Who's someone that would have got the best out of Matt Le Tissier?
That's a good question. That's two separate questions, actually, because I probably... I love watching Liverpool play. I think the way Liverpool play is fantastic. They're really proper attacking, gung-ho, throw men forward. Got some great forward players. So yes, it'd be lovely to play in that team. However, when they haven't got the ball and they do all that pressing, I'm not sure how long I would have stayed in that team.
5 minutes.
So it's a little bit of a conundrum there. So I think I'd probably. It's a little bit similar at Spurs, but one of the players that I like at Tottenham who I think kind of reminds me a little bit of the way I played is Christian Eriksen. I like the way Eriksen plays. He sees a pass really well. His set pieces are great. I really like watching him play. So I think Pochettino as well would like to have played under him. But anybody would love to have played under Guardiola. I mean, geez, the way those boys play football is just incredible. So there's a few that you just go, wow, some of that football is just breathtaking.
And in terms of the player of the Premier League, a lot of focus on Eden Hazard in the first part of the season. It seems like when Eden Hazard is on the top of his game, Chelsea win the league.
Yeah.
But Jose Mourinho made that observation, so you've got to think that they're a title contender this year. But in terms of who is the current best player in the Premier League, Mo Salah, I know it was in the Champions League, but 50 goals in 65 appearances.
That's pretty impressive.
Pretty good,
isn't
it?
That is an amazing record. And you know you're good when you go like 3 or 4 games without scoring, and they go, "Oh, he's having a drought." What? 3 of them, and it's just, you just think, wow, you've set a standard for yourself there that is just so high that people are going, yeah, he's got a bit of a drought now, 3 games without a goal. No, that's for me. I love watching Eden Hazard. I've watched him live a few times, and he gives problems to Southampton every time he plays against them. So he's one of my favourites, and I love watching David Silva play football. I think David Silva is just an absolute artist on a football pitch. He's one of those players who doesn't have to run at 100 miles an hour to have an impression on a game of football, and they're kind of the players that, because I wasn't the quickest, I kind of have more admiration for those players who have such an influence on football matches without being, an 11-second 100-metre runner.
Just on that then, Matt, and last few, and I promise we'll wrap things up. In terms, you mentioned there David Silva. In terms of your day, and the obvious ones are Gaza. Paul Scholes always gets mentioned whenever I ask this question. Is there anyone that perhaps doesn't get much credit, who you always just loved watching, whether you were up against him, whether he was a teammate, someone that perhaps was far better than the media or fans would give him credit for?
That's a really good question.
And don't say Francis Benali, because I'm a fan.
I think kind of during my time at Southampton, I played with a guy called Eyal Berkovic, who was a very good footballer, one of the best passers of a ball that I saw in terms of seeing passes between players and the weight of pass, all that kind of stuff. He was one where I went, well, actually, you're as good as me at that.
I love it.
So he was kind of one. I mean, you wouldn't want him in a 50-50 tackle. Do you know what I mean? It made me look like a hard man in the tackle department. But in terms of seeing a pass through to a forward player, I thought was outstanding. Guys like Chris Waddle. I used to love watching Chris Waddle play football. Chris Waddle for me was just, and it was brilliant. I got to play in a match with Chris a couple of weeks ago, which that was just brilliant for me. I think the way that he just used to go past people by just a drop of the shoulder, his body movement is just unbelievable. And there were times on the football pitch where I played against him, and I'd be like 40 yards away from him, and he'd drop his shoulder, and I find myself going, "Oh, I've gone one way, and he's gone the other," and I'm like, "Well, how do you do that?"
That's amazing. I love that, because you yourself, I mean, you're a legend, a Premier League legend, a Southampton legend, but you've still got players that make you kind of say, "Wow."
No, absolutely. No, I'm a football fan. I love watching players who can do something a little bit out of the ordinary, a little bit that you just kind of on the edge of your seat going, yeah. That's why at Southampton I used to love going and watch Adam Lallana. Adam was an outstanding player for Southampton. Him and Ricky Lambert, I just used to go and watch them. Just
on that, Gareth Bale, a lot of people forget, Southampton Academy graduate. I had a friend up north in Scotland who was in the same youth team as him, a lad by the name of Stuart Anderson, and I remember speaking to him and saying, we've got this left back, he's not very quick. But then I watched a game, and I've said this on this show time and time again, I think it was at Pride Park, it was Derby, he was 17 playing at left back, was Gareth Bale, and he whips this 25.
Scored a free kick. Yeah, over the wall, I remember it, yeah.
Was he someone that stood out at youth level? Was he someone you thought, wow?
Well, I didn't see much of Gareth in the youth team, so I only kind of got to see Gareth when he broke into the first team at Southampton. Because that was just after I retired, so I wasn't watching a lot of the youth team games then. But when I saw him in the first team, he was just like, oh blimey, and he was bombing down the wing, he's overlapping, he's whipping crosses in, and I was just thinking, yeah, this guy's could be decent. And all of a sudden, he's sold for a pittance when you look at it nowadays in terms of the money. I think we ended up getting probably less than 10 million quid for him because of the way the deal was structured. And I think because Southampton went into financial difficulties, they had to take a smaller payment for him from what was due for Spurs. They could pay it off earlier. So when you look at kind of what he was sold for now, and I know he struggled when he first went to Spurs, but he was very young, and this is what I'm saying about youngsters. They'll go through periods of good form, but they'll have periods where they dip, and it happened to me. I didn't become a regular in the team at Southampton until I was 21. My form was up and down, and you just have to find that consistency level. And when he found it, geez, He turned into some player.
Unbelievable.
A teammate of Gareth's at Real Madrid right now, Luka Modric, won the FIFA Best Player award. A lot of people thinking that he could go on and win the Ballon d'Or and break that 10-year, that decade of dominance that Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo have had. Would that be warranted for you, given what he's done? We had this big argument, Chris and I, on the show.
I love Luka Modric. I think he's a wonderful footballer. And again, he's kind of in that kind of David Silva mould where, he's not a 100-mile-an-hour player. He plays the game at his own pace. He dictates the play. But I'm sorry, if Lionel Messi doesn't win it, he's just, Lionel Messi's on a different level, on a different planet.
What have I been telling you, Rob?
No, I only play devil's advocate.
I love Luka Modric, and he's a fantastic footballer, but I've not seen anybody in my lifetime as good as Lionel Messi.
And why is that, Matt? And I know a lot of people have said his finishing, his dribbling, and I think it was maybe a colleague of Gary Lineker who said, if you actually look at the stat, best dribbler we've ever seen, best passer of a ball we've ever seen, and the best finisher.
I watch him in football matches sometimes, and he'll have 10 or 15 minute spells where he doesn't touch the ball, and he'll drift into positions on the pitch where you think, what's he doing there? And then all of a sudden the ball gets switched, he gets on the ball and he comes alive, and next thing you know, ball's in the back of the net, and you just go, wow, where's that come from? And Ronaldo's great, don't get me wrong. My opinion, Lionel Messi is the best footballer I've seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, and that's the artistry, is it? That's the fact that Ronaldo has done it, I guess, the kind of mechanical way, if you like. He's improved his game through tenacity and hard work.
Absolutely, yeah, incredible.
Lionel Messi has
work.
the touch of genius. Is that the difference?
That, I think, for me is the difference. I think Lionel Messi's ability is more God-given. I think is the way that I would describe it. And Cristiano has done unbelievable in his career with everything that he's achieved. But I think me as a football fan, and you had to choose a team to go and watch, I'd choose Barcelona to go and watch because Lionel Messi's playing in it.
You mentioned there a touch of genius. Last couple, Matt, and I promise you we'll let you get going. You, and I don't want to make you blush, had a touch of genius. I saw that you were aware of this. I can't quite believe this. 25 years ago yesterday,
yep,
you scored those two frightening goals against Newcastle United that appeared in the same Match of the Day Goal of the Month competition. It was pointed out to me by a Leeds fan, you didn't actually win. It was bloomin' Rod Wallace who won the goal of the month.
I know, he won the goal of the
season.
That's outrageous.
He
won the goal of the season with that as well. I mean, it was some goal, and obviously Rod was my teammate for a few years earlier. So he had the upper hand on me on that one. But I think those two goals were kind of a real pivotal turning point in my career, because up to that point we'd had a manager in Ian Branford who didn't really want me in the team. In fact, that game was my comeback game after I'd been dropped for 5 matches, and we'd not won any of those 5 matches that we'd played in that time. So he put me back in the team for this game live on Sky, and I'm pretty sure he was just about to substitute me before I scored that first goal as well.
I'm not sure there's ever been a more nonchalant finish than the second goal, which was almost like you weren't even... It was like you were just kicking the ball away as opposed to into the top corner. But which was your favourite of the two?
The first one was my favourite. I think obviously I missed it a little bit at the end, but the lead up to it, obviously the first touch, I think was, that was just perfect. The way it just kind of fell behind me and I flicked it back in front of me. Just enough in front of me to be able to get there before Barry Venice, I think, was the first defender that came in, and it kind of just all rolled nicely from there. And the finish was a bit of a scuff off the bottom of my boot, but the second one was nice. Obviously, it was the winning goal, which obviously makes it a little bit more special. Scoring a winning goal, a couple of minutes from the end of a game, it's a pretty cool thing to do, and to do it in that manner, just with the volley, was just lovely. You have said on this very show that it was your Blackburn goal against Tim Flowers that was your favourite. That goal at Ewood Park, I remember that as well. The dip that you generated on that. I tell you what, it was. I saw Gylfi Sigurdsson score a goal for Everton against Leicester using a very similar technique. It wasn't quite as far out as mine, but
he's watched your YouTube videos, Matt.
That he used there was exactly the same technique that I used to score that goal at Blackburn.
I want to finish up, if I can, by asking you about your penalty record, Matthew, because there's only one man that has been able, and it's famous, I'm sure you've had this question in Q&As up and down the land. Mark Crosley will probably still give you nightmares, but why was it you were so successful from the penalty spot? Give us the mental, how would you always, or all but one time, get the better of a goalkeeper?
I think the first bit about it is I looked forward to taking penalties. I wanted to take them, and I enjoyed that moment of the whole stadium looking at me, and that kind of appealed to my ego. So first and foremost, I enjoyed that. I liked the pressure of the situation, and I kind of embraced it. So I had a thing where I would kind of be able to erase all negative thoughts from my mind. So people have doubts, I think, a lot when they stand up and they take the penalty, and it's like, oh, I'm expected to score here. What happens if I miss? That kind of thing. So the process of me going, when the penalty gets given, I then imagine the crowd rising once I've scored and hit the back of the net. So that was the thing that went through my head. I just go, oh, brilliant, great chance to score a goal, put the ball down. Just imagine the crowd, once this ball hits the back of the net, crowd are going to go mental. And so I have all those thoughts in my head that are all positive thoughts.
Especially if you've done it 46 out of 46 times, then just one miss.
I missed. I think I took 48, scored 47. The one I missed was number 22, I think, out that run. And I used to watch the goalkeeper till quite late in my strike, and I sometimes change my mind right at the last second if a goalkeeper moved too early. And the goal, the one that I missed, Mark kind of just went to go one way, but he went a really little bit, and then he sprang the other way, and I saw the little bit, and he timed it just right, so that I saw the little spring that way. So I've gone the other way, and he sprung and gone that way and saved it. The worst bit about it was he actually saved it, and he parried it straight back to me. And from 6 yards, I was so shocked that I missed the penalty. I put the ball over the crossbar from 6 yards. I was like, oh, God's sake, what's going on here?
I love that though, Matt. What you've said there is something very interesting. Sports psychologists worked with you on that, or that was all you, about you could see that you envisaged the roar of the fans? Because
that was all me. Yeah, we never really kind of had sports psychologists in my day. Towards the end of my career, they kind of came in a little bit, but that was just kind of the way I was. I had a real good, positive mental attitude to most things.
That's why he's a low handicap golfer.
Exactly that. Listen, I want to finish off on the golf. It is the Mike Clark Golf Day. It is a week today, in actual fact, up at the Jumeirah Golf Estates. Matt will be there. Robbie Fowler flying in specifically for it as well. Ian Bell, the England cricketer.
Yep.
You're going to have fun up there. You'll be regaling one or two tales.
We will indeed.
I'm sure one or two that you've touched on here. Is there a go-to story? Just tempt us and tease us with a go-to story that we're talking about.
I think that there's kind of quite a few stories that I tell kind of about my career, but I think that one of the funniest things that actually happened to me was when just after I retired, and people talk about kind of you being in the public eye and what's it like, being famous and living in the public eye, and great most of the time, but I did have one incident just after I retired where I was taking a young lady out for lunch. This is in Southampton, by the way. I'm taking a young lady out for lunch, and I go into a bar and I ordered the drinks. Barman starts looking at me a little bit funny, and I thought, oh, here we go. And he came back with the drinks. He went, I recognise you from somewhere. And I stood there and I thought, I've just played football in your city for the last 16 years, mate. Do you know what I mean? But you can't say anything in those situations. So I just stood there and I went, all right. He went, yeah, don't tell me. So I said, okay. So I paid him for my drinks. He's come back with a change. He's gone, I've got it. He said, you're a sportsman, weren't you? I went, yeah, kind of. He said, you played for England, didn't you? And I looked at the young lady. I went, yeah, I did actually. And he went, I knew it. Phil Tufnell. And I was like, of all the cities in the world where I've never thought I'd get mistaken for Phil Tufnell, I thought I was safe in Southampton. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
Oh, that is fantastic. Listen, Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. We could keep you here all day, but I appreciate your family's over. You love Dubai. Dubai's...
I love it, yeah.
Yeah, golf.
Fantastic. The golf course is here, absolutely superb, and I love being warm.
Yeah, Southampton. Well, you're on the south coast. You try coming up north.
This summer was good. We had a lovely summer on the south coast this year. I didn't even have to go away on holiday.
Well, that's it.
Wait until October to come out here.
You're a bloody good man, so you are, Matt Tissier. It's been an absolute pleasure. It has been.
Cheers,
Enjoy
guys.
the golf day. We're looking forward to it. We're going to be popping up there. Info at Swing Against Cancer. I believe that there are a couple of golf spots left. Plenty of tickets for the evening with. It's going to be a great night. Tom Ucker, our colleague here at Dubai 103.8, he will be manning the fort. Matt Tissier, Robbie Fowler, and Ian Bell. That is it. We will be back with another edition of Off Script Extra Time in the near future. Thank you.